And we're going to read Daniel 4, verses 1 to 18. King Nebuchadnezzar, to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. It has seemed good to me to show the signs and wonders that the Most High God has done for me. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion endures from generation to generation. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and prospering in my palace. I saw a dream that made me afraid. As I lay in bed, the fancies and the visions of my head alarmed me. So I made a decree that all the wise men of Babylon should be brought before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers came in, and I told them the dream, but they could not make known to me its interpretation. At last, Daniel came in before me, he who was named Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And I told him the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that no mystery is too difficult for you, tell me the visions of my dream that I saw in their interpretation. The vision of my head as I lay in bed were these. I saw, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong, and its top reached to heaven, and it was visible to the ends of the whole earth. Its leaves were beautiful, and its fruit abundant, and it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the heavens lived in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. I saw in the visions of my head as I lay in bed, and behold, a watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven. He proclaimed aloud and said thus, Chop down the tree and lop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches, but leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze amid the tender grass of the field. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. Let his portion be with the beasts of the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him. And let 7 periods of time pass over him. The sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and gives it to whom he will, and sets over it the lowliest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, saw, and you, O Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation, but you are able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in you. Over to Chris.
Well, thanks for reading, Tom, and let me add my welcome to Tom's. I know we've got a number of people here for the first time. Particular welcome to you, if that's you. So thank you for joining us this lunchtime. We're in the first bit of Daniel chapter 4, and this chapter was written to show us very simply that God alone is great, that he rules over all, and that everyone, without exception, is subject to him. And what's wonderful about this particular chapter, this is Nebuchadnezzar's own testimony, his own story of how he came to realize that God alone is great. You remember, of course, that Nebuchadnezzar was the leader of the ancient world, superpower of the time, and this chapter shows he realized that he too was a man under authority. And what a turnaround. I mean, if you've been with us as we've been going through Daniel, I mean, Nebuchadnezzar, he's one of those sort of characters that you cannot forget. Powerful, sure, we've seen lots of displays of his power. But unhinged has been the word that I've come back to again and again. He's just unpredictable. You never know quite what he's going to do. As he charges through sort of assembling lots of kingdoms for himself. You remember that's how the Jewish people, the Israelites, ended up being in Babylon, because he decided to go on a little bit of a rampage. I mean, anyone that personally got in his way, he had a variety of expressions, things like being torn limb from limb or being turned into a pile of body parts. Wonderful sort of images like that. Anyway, by this stage, I mean, despite what's happened in the last few chapters, number of really quite convincing, I think in our opinion as readers, convincing encounters with God's people, even with the Lord God himself, nevertheless, he has remained resistant. All that changes today. And he wants the world to know. Just look at the expression in the middle of verse 17. To the end that the living may know that the Most High rules. So the point for us today, we often say the point for us as readers today, but the point for us, taking this very literally, the point for us is as living today is to know exactly that. I mean, if God can bring a man like Nebuchadnezzar under his authority, then watch out. Nobody is beyond his reach. And Nebuchadnezzar is actually, it's not only his testimony, it's also originally penned in his own hand, probably via a scribe, but nevertheless his own words. And so he tops and tails this chapter with some pretty big statements about God. Just look at chapter 4, verse 3. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. His dominion endures from generation to generation. I mean, that immediately stands out as being completely different to anything Nebuchadnezzar has really sort of believed to date. And then look how he ends. We didn't actually read this. Right at the end of the chapter. We'll be here next week. Verse 37. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are right, and his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. That is quite something, isn't it? For the king of Babylon to say, God is great. In preparation, I came across a great story of King Louis XIV. He died in 1714. He was king of France. He'd reigned for 72 years, which by any account is a pretty amazing feat. I think the problem is lots of people told him that he was pretty amazing through his life, and he got a higher and higher opinion of himself. His court was well known across the whole of Europe for being the most fabulous, most magnificent court in Europe. And he built lots of sort of quite impressive landmarks. You know, we're probably aware of places like Palace of Versailles. I mean, that was built by this king, King Louis XIV. Anyway, as all this was going to his head, he began to think, well, I better leave the world as sort of a memento in my name. I'll plan a funeral that they'll never forget. And he decided at this point that he should be known forevermore as Louis the Great, which doesn't really work, does it? You can't really call yourself the Great. I mean, if somebody else calls you the Great, like Alexander or something, then that's fair enough. But you can't call yourself the Great and really have credibility. It immediately sort of undoes a lot. Anyway, he planned his funeral with very strict instructions. He was to be placed in a gold coffin. The coffin was going to be placed right in the heart of Notre Dame and the cathedral. And he was told then, all the people that were conducting his funeral were told that all of the candles in the cathedral needed to be snubbed out, apart from one placed on his coffin. At the memorial, when he died, thousands of people turned up, and they waited in hushed silence to see what was going to happen. And then the bishop began to speak, and the more I read about this bishop, the more I like him. He's called Bishop Massilian. I don't know much about him, but it sounds like he had the right idea from what he did next. You know, so all of this very sort of dramatic event is going, gold coffin, dead king that wants to be known as the Great, one candle. And Bishop Massilian began to speak. And he walked over as his opening words began, snubbed out the candle, and just said very simply to everybody gathered, God alone is great. And that's the point of this chapter. You'll see that on the handout, the first point there. God rules over all, kings and all people. Now, one of the best ways of drawing attention to a key idea in the Bible is to repeat it. Bible writers didn't have the ability to sort of write in bold, capital, sort of highlighted and that sort of thing as we might today. That's how we'd make it quite shouty, wouldn't we, by doing sort of big capitals and things like that. Back then, they would repeat it, and that would make it stand out. And so just look with me at the repeated idea that comes in this chapter. Verse 17, the Most High rules the kingdom of men, gives it to whom he will, and sets over it the lowliest of men. Verse 25, The Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. Verse 32, until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. You get the idea. Repeat it again and again. We'll just home in on verse 17 today for our time together. God rules over all kings and all people. Now, of course, this becomes really clear through the dream and its subsequent interpretation. It's quite an easy dream to get our heads around. Verse 10, just to remind us, huge tree that dominated the earth. And as the tree grows, verse 11, becomes strong, reaches to all of heaven. Verse 12, the leaves and the fruit are to feed the world. Shade, branches provide homes for all creatures. Verse 12, just to be clear, this is how important the tree is. All flesh was fed from it. It's a really significant picture. The tree, if you like, was the life source of the created world. And in the interpretation, which we didn't look at in the reading just now, just look on to verse 22. Nebuchadnezzar is told, this tree is you. Verse 22, it is you, O king, who have grown and become strong. Your greatness has grown and reaches to heaven, and your dominion to the ends of the earth. Nebuchadnezzar the great, the mighty. Except it's all so temporary. Look at verse 13. Verse 14, it sort of extends a watcher, a visitor. We don't get the identity. Perhaps an angel from heaven comes and quickly turns this magnificent, great tree into a pile of kindling wood. What happens to him is the very thing he's been threatening to do to everybody that gets in his way. The trunk is chopped down, the branches are lopped off, the leaves are stripped. And the point to Nebuchadnezzar is a very simple one. God is in charge, not you. You may be the life source of the earth, but only because God has given you that position. You'll be reduced to nothing very, very quickly. Your kingdom is in the balance. God rules over all people, even you, Nebuchadnezzar. Now, let's just think about this in terms of application for a bit, because I think we find the application of this actually quite hard as we extend the sort of the reach of the application. I mean, it's fine when we consider the good guys of this world and the good guys that are put in charge. It's relatively straightforward application at that point. I mean, think about some of those characters you learnt about through history at school and that sort of thing. You know, the well-known Mahatma Gandhi, celebrated because of all of his principles of peace and social justice, still often referred to. Winston Churchill, providing leadership at a critical time in world history. George Washington, bringing democratic institutions into play. Personal favorite of mine, Queen Elizabeth II. I mean, it's hard to find any fault with her, isn't it? At least I haven't heard any. I think she's fantastic, or at least she was. Or she is, depending on how you look at it. I mean, she's in heaven, isn't she? I think we can talk about her in the present tense. I mean, she had such clear public faith. But just to be clear, I do know that she died, if anyone is in any doubt. And in these situations, I mean, these are the good guys. Yes, I'm really happy, sort of from my vantage point, to say yes. As I look back over history, I'm really glad that God is in control. Look at these great people that he raised up at the right time. Some of them were even Christian. But what about the bad guys? Idi Amin, brutal rule of Uganda in the 70s. Saddam Hussein, Bin Laden, Pol Pot, Stalin and his extermination camps. Hitler, Ayatollah Khomeini and his proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. I mean, are we still happy to say with equal confidence that God rules over them, that God has established them? And that's the point of this text. Because we need to remember which camp Nebuchadnezzar falls into. Oh, sure, he's softened and changed today, but remember where he would naturally fall in terms of his historical achievements. He'd be with those bad guys. And I think this must challenge our view of God's sovereign control over this world. You see, it isn't that God is sometimes involved in some areas of life and can sort of help us when we call out to him, although that, of course, remains true. You know, if I'm worried about an exam or a doctor's appointment or whatever it is, absolutely, we have a sovereign God. We can appeal to him in our private prayers about anything and everything. The point is here that God has got everything, all the little details, and everyone under his control. Small details and the big leaders, the local doctor and the notorious evil dictator. Middle of verse 17 again. To the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men. Now, let me just draw out three particular aspects of this rule that I hope will help us just think about this a little bit more. I put them there as sort of subpoints there, that God is ruling this world now. Again, that key verse, 17, the Most High rules the kingdom of men. He rules the kingdom of men. It's in a present continuous tense. Not one day, but now, in the present. The living should know that God is presently ruling. And I think this is important, isn't it? Because as I went through that list of bad guys just now, I should imagine a few of us felt a bit uncomfortable. What God would want to claim to be in control of tyrannical evil brutes? Let me just cast our minds back to chapter 2. I know not everybody was with us as we went through Daniel chapter 2, but as readers, it sort of should still be vaguely fresh in our minds. So I think it's relevant just to sort of cast our minds back to that. You'll remember back in chapter 2, there was a massive human figure in the vision that was given to Nebuchadnezzar then. A head of gold, a body of silver, legs of bronze, feet of iron. The head, he was told, interpretation, was his kingdom, Babylon. And then we learned that each of the subsequent sort of materials of the statue represented subsequent kingdoms. So the Babylonians were going to be replaced by the Persians, replaced by the Greeks, replaced by the Romans. And then a stone not cut by human hands came and smashed everything to pieces. And that stone then formed a kingdom which overtook the whole world. And the big point then was that one day God's rule will be all-consuming. Everybody will see one day God will rule. And that is true. And God's rule will one day be visible to all, undeniable to all. But it doesn't mean that God isn't ruling now. And that's the point of this chapter. There's a present reality that is brought to bear, which couples the truth that we saw in chapter 2. And then the second subpoint there, God delegates his rule to who he pleases. Middle of verse 17. The Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. You see, there is absolutely no chance of anyone being able to sort of slip through the net. Oh, God wasn't paying full attention and suddenly that tyrannical leader got in charge. That's just not possible. There's no chance for anyone to sort of intimidate their way to the top outside of God's control. God has designs and plans which are hidden from us. We don't know why a particular person is given power at a particular time. But the point of this is God does that, and our job is to trust him, even if it doesn't make sense to us. And especially if we sort of think, if you're like me, you'll be prone to think like this, well, I think I could have made a slightly better decision than so-and-so who's currently at the top of wherever. We have to be careful about thinking like that. It's a common sort of human trait, which actually goes right back to the Garden of Eden, where, of course, humanity, Adam and Eve together, assumed that they could do better than God. So getting our heads around chapter 4 means accepting that God knows best. We won't necessarily know why, but we can be sure that he acts rightly. He gives his rule to whomever he pleases. And we must remember in the end that, of course, history, all of history is his story, God's story. He reigns when the politicians we vote for get in power, and he reigns when the politicians we don't vote for get there too. God gives rule to whomever he pleases. And then thirdly, he gives it to some highly unlikely characters. End of verse 17, he sets over it the lowliest of men. Now, the lowliest of men, it's an interesting expression. It doesn't just mean the morally abhorrent, although that would be a category that would be sort of rightly included in that sort of phrase. It means God gives rule to people of low or unnoticeable status. I think we see that often, don't we? We've perhaps experienced it. Maybe we are experiencing it. You sort of think to yourself, if you've been working in the city for some time, you sort of think, how did that lemon ever end up in charge of me? Maybe you are the lemon who's in charge. Well, here is the all-encompassing nature of God's rule. And given that point, the big direction of the text is that people need to recognize that. The person in charge was put there for a reason. The frustrations that we experience need to be handled carefully. And that seems to be the focus in verse 17. Just have a look at it again now. We'll look through the whole thing. The sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will, sets over it the lowliest of men. And that brings me much more briefly to the second and final point there. In the end, everyone must accept that God rules. We focus in on Nebuchadnezzar, the high point of chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar turns to God. It's amazing. He actually wholeheartedly turns to God while there is time. Verse 34 again, just look at it one last time. At the end of days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven. My reason returned to me. I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever. It's a change of direction in this life, which of course changes his direction into eternity. And if you're a Christian here today, if you're one of God's people today, then one day I genuinely believe we will meet Nebuchadnezzar in heaven. Isn't that amazing? He's there. The change happens when he lifts his eye to heaven, a clear indication that he now acknowledges power beyond himself, and something that he's never done wholeheartedly before. God himself is to be rightfully praised. End of verse 34. Blessed the Most High, praised and honored him who lives forever. His dominion is an everlasting dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. He's finally realized his kingdom won't last. He won't last. Only God's kingdom will last. What an acknowledgement. And can I just say for us as we close now, we are in an exponentially more privileged position. Nebuchadnezzar, the best he could do was declare the Most High. It's an honorable title, but he didn't have the real identity of who the Most High is. We know the identity of the Most High. Paul's letter to the Philippians. Therefore God has exalted him, bestowed on him the name that is above every name, that every knee should bow, every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Only Jesus Christ is great. And so as we close, let me just ask you personally to consider, what position does Jesus Christ hold in your life? Only Jesus Christ is great. Well, I'm going to close in a short prayer and then hand back to Tom. Our Heavenly Father, we do praise you and thank you for making your Son the Most High known over all, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Most High of all people, of all time, of each of us. May we consider afresh the Lord Jesus today in his name.